UPS has a purpose and a promise to deliver what matters for people and our planet. Volunteering 30 million hours and planting 50 million trees by 2030. Impacting the lives of 1 billion by 2040. And going 100% carbon neutral by 2050. Big goals for a brighter future. It starts by doing what's right and holding ourselves accountable. Getting it done with creative thinkers, problem solvers, and those who think way outside the box. Making sure everyone has a seat, a voice, and belongs. That's our purpose, that's our promise. Change is everywhere, and it starts right here.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of the PBEC Annual Dialogue Summit for 2022. My name is Mike Walsh. I'm the CEO of the Pacific Basin Economic Council, and I'm delighted now to open day 2 with a breakfast dialogue. And I welcome our colleagues in the PBEC hierarchy. And I'd like to start with saying another good warm welcome to Dr. George Lam, our Vice Chairman at PBEC, who joins us this morning, along with Board of Director Lester Huang, who's also the co-chairman at PC Wu. And our also another member of PBEC is Anthony Chan, CEO of Isola Capital. So I'm delighted that the three of them have agreed to come together and have a breakfast dialogue on some of the opportunities that they see for Hong Kong in a post-COVID world. So over to our panel, and it's a dialogue. So I'll kick off by handing the mic over and the floor to Dr. George. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Again, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, to this breakfast dialogue. I think all of us agree that the PBEC region, I mean, Asia Pacific, particularly the RCEP region, is the key driver for world economy. But we also would agree that the very core engines, the dual core engines are really the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, and the ASEAN region. Now, together, these two core engines are driving the economy forward. And the two are very complementary. They are already partner number one for each other. And in particular, the new player, the GBA with Hong Kong as the storefront, as the gateway to the world, and also the world into China is growing very fast. Already the GDP is bigger than that of Korea or Australia, and in fact bigger than Thailand and Myanmar combined. Growing very fast with per capita GDP of more than 20,000, 22,000 US dollars. So it's a big consumer market, the middle class, biggest middle class in the world now being created. So tremendous. So I like to really ask my fellow panelists to perhaps, highlight the opportunities. That's the key word, as Mike said earlier. This breakfast is about opportunities, this breakfast dialogues. So perhaps Lester, with you, covering the region so well with legal practice and also with your numerous community service activities. And perhaps Anthony, so we just keep going because coffee will be waiting for us at 8:45. So Lester, please.
Lester, I think you may mute. Yeah.
I'm not on mute. Am I on mute?
No, you're fine.
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Just looking at the GBA, we're actually looking at a. I'm getting a very bad echo here. Yeah. So GBA, in fact, is really one of the biggest. Well, it's one of the 10 biggest economies itself, and looking at the GDP within that, as George has mentioned, I think we're looking at over $2,000 billion GDP within that region alone, and so what it's really famous for, and it's driving all this GDP, is in fact its innovation hub. It's really if you look at Shenzhen and the special economic zone area, we're looking at a huge innovation hub. And this is really going to be the Silicon Valley of China. I feel that on that front, it's already attracting a tremendous amount of foreign direct investment. And there are huge opportunities in collaborating with the innovators in that region. So that I think is a bit of a start. Of course, from an education standpoint, we also see that nearly all of the publicly funded universities in Hong Kong are setting up their own campuses in the Greater Bay Area. And this is really because Hong Kong, we're really lacking space for that. But more importantly, it's to collaborate more closely with the mainland. And we are attracting some of the best students into these universities. And these students have the potential to come up with great inventions themselves one day. And it'll be a tremendous workforce that will serve the whole of the southern China region. The universities, of course, are some of the top ranking ones in the world. The University of Hong Kong was ranked 33. And there are, in fact, 4 universities that are ranked within the top 100, according to Times Higher Education, that will have a presence in the Greater Bay Area. And on that front, I think that this is a vast human resource. Now, to be able to collaborate with the Greater Bay Area, though, we need to have different linkers, and this is where the role of Hong Kong actually also comes in. You know, being familiar with how things work across the border, and you know, having an outlook that is international. I feel that Hong Kong is very well positioned to play a very active role in this. And if we look at how the government actually sees this, that in fact is very much what the government is also positioning itself to support. And then on that front, the whole of the government machinery is in fact coming behind business to help out on that front, providing links, providing contacts, providing even providing in some instances resources for training and capital for that. So George, just by way of a quick introduction, that's where we are. George, you're on mute.
Thank you, Lester. You are pointing to all the bright spots, you know, that we need to share with colleagues and friends around the region. I like to now turn to Anthony. You know, building on the points about tech talents and, you know, the Silicon Valley of you know, of Asia and much more. You know, what are the other quick opportunities that you can bring to the table, you know, for this breakfast table this morning?
Sure, George, and thank you for that. I think I echo a lot of the sentiments from both yourself and Lester with respect to Hong Kong and the Greater Bay Area. Maybe I'll also put a little bit of context before I dive into, you know, sort of from an investor's perspective, the opportunities, especially, you know, in venture and growth capital. One of the things that really, you know, people may not recognize, but I think Lester made a very good observation about Hong Kong being at the forefront, you know, for both capital markets and investment is, if you think back to 97, I think Hong Kong was about 18% of the GDP of China. You know, today, Hong Kong is, I think, slightly under 3%. So the Greater Bay Area becomes a really important development, because the Greater Bay Area itself probably represents about 12 to 13% of the GDP of China. So with that context, you can see how Hong Kong is such a relevant place, especially for investors, because Hong Kong, if you look back 25 years, was the key gateway, right, into deploying into China, getting access to really the earlier stages of investments into some of what are now today the largest tech companies in China. You know, some of them basically were formed in the late 90s and listed actually through Hong Kong, you know, in the 2000s. So if you observe that sort of trajectory, you look at the opportunity that the Greater Bay Area presents, it's enormous. So for ourselves, you know, maybe just a bit of context, because we're an investment firm, right? We focus on investment products that can be ranging from technology globally to more regionally and more locally. So we are one of the co-investment partners, for example, with the Innovation Technology Venture Fund in Hong Kong. That's a brilliant example of how, you know, you've got public and private collaboration to create vehicles that can deploy capital into early to growth stage companies, you know, from Hong Kong or within the Greater Bay Area, and allow them to tap into the use market or use case markets in the Greater Bay region, right? And the Greater Bay region, I think, also has a few attributes that are going to allow it to perform much more efficiently, because there's a lot of cultural affinity, right? Think about the Guangdong province, right? The familiarity in terms of, you know, language, culture, you know, its proximity to Hong Kong, its understanding of how Hong Kong operates, you know, with its rule of law and the capital market systems that we have here. So what we see is there's great opportunity to attract and retain talent within that area, allow that talent to leverage the corporations, whether they are in hardware or software in Shenzhen, whether it's the ability to tap the capital markets, both private and public in Hong Kong, and ultimately to basically, you know, as George alluded to, develop a so-called sort of Silicon Valley equivalent, you know, in this part of the world. So, you know, we continue to see especially with the sort of the global bifurcation, right? Where technology is leading to, that Hong Kong in particular, I think in the Greater Bay Area will become a place where we will continue to track not just talent within the region, but across the broader Asia Pacific region and also capital. So maybe I'll just pause there so we can percolate on that.
Thanks, Anthony. I think both Lester and yourself already pointed to Hong Kong's strengths, such as capital market, investment. Some people say, my friends in Southeast Asia always mention that Hong Kong's attractiveness as a place for risk capital, and smart money and all that. And indeed, as you may be aware, our friends in PBEC, the Hong Kong government recently announced the setup of Hong Kong Investment Management Company, and also a lot more initiatives, family office policy, ESG, and so on. So we expect to deploy more money into the region, and this is really where the complementary aspect is. Another is the fact that Hong Kong has announced the target to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, and China announced its goal as well, and that's 2060. So we got a lot of work to do, and roadmaps are abundant, but it's really action that speak. So here, the GBA, the Greater Bay Area, the G is not just greater, because of the vast, the big area, but the G here, in my humble view, is global and green. So I think on that note, I will see more and more investment from Hong Kong to the rest of the region, and more entrepreneurs coming to Hong Kong. We have produced more than 20 unicorns, and I think we expect the GBA to be the super breeding ground for future unicorns as well, and more investment and trade and so on will lead to a lot of challenges. From time to time, it's only natural, such as disputes, legal disputes, and and intellectual property issues and so on. Lester, you are the dean of the profession. Maybe we all look forward to seeing if we in doing good business together, if we run into the happy problem of having a genuine dispute or whatever. How can we get solutions?
Yeah. Well, Anthony mentioned that we have sound rule of law in Hong Kong. I'd really like to just underline that, with not only a very sound rule of law, but a very independent judiciary. There have been questions about Hong Kong's Court of Final Appeal, and the participation of foreign judges on the Hong Kong Court of Final Appeal. We've seen some foreign judges who have pulled out, and that seemed to have sounded a bit of an alarm. But I personally, I've spoken to many senior judges, and they themselves feel that this is not an issue. There continue to be over 15 judges from abroad who are coming regularly to Hong Kong to participate in our judicial work, and they do so at the very highest level. And this is in fact provided for under our basic law, and therefore these judges in fact are very keen to share their expertise as well. The whole scenario is that the administration of justice has not really substantially changed in the 25 years since the Hong Kong handover, and the efficiency of the courts can be improved, but I think that there is in fact no question about the impartiality or the independence of judges. On that front, I think that that is one of the key things that investors from abroad in particular will be looking at, because knowing that there is a reliable as well as a very responsive judiciary makes investment decisions all that more easy. And I think that in terms of the legal profession support, we see a growing demand for arbitration and mediation services, so much so that in fact the national policy now is to in fact set up in Hong Kong an office that hopes to develop Hong Kong into not just a mediation center for businesses and individuals, but also a mediation center for country disputes. So disputes that involve national sovereign entities can also be mediated in Hong Kong. So that is a very positive development on the legal front that is most encouraging. And I think that it also bodes well for lawyers in Hong Kong, because not only does the pie increase, I mean the workload increase, but it also favors those who are from abroad who wish to work in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, as you know, has a rather liberal entrance for foreign lawyers to come to Hong Kong. We have over 60 of the world's largest 100 firms with a presence in Hong Kong already. And that is something which can increase. And there does not seem to be any cap on the potential for both local and foreign lawyers coming in.
Thank you, Lester. I mean, this is very encouraging, because we are talking about a lot of money being deployed in various projects in the region, and people want to have, want to be protected, by sound rule of law and legal system, consistent and fair and transparent. So this is where Hong Kong can add our humble contribution. Now, we talk about the today we are doing hybrid, Zoom and everything. We are into year 3 of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have seen the fast advance of digital economy, work from home, e-learning, you name it, telemedicine. I'd like to turn to Anthony, to see share the further opportunities in the digital front. If we recall the RCEP agreement, the recent RCEP conclusion, you find that one of the 20 chapters of the agreement was devoted entirely to e-commerce, of course, borderless, cross-border e-commerce. And this is where SMEs and startups, can do a lot. Anthony, anything that you'd like to point us to?
Sure. Look, I mean, that's a very broad topic, but if you think about it, I mean, the whole RCEP region is going to represent about 1/3 of the world's GDP, right? And it will take time to roll out some of this borderless or tariff-free arrangements. But as you pointed out, George, that's a huge market. But one of the key elements for e-commerce is the supply chain. And if you look at the Greater Bay Area, what it represents, it's also approximately, I believe, 1/3 of the exports of China come through the Greater Bay Area. And especially from an investment perspective into products that could be exported, I think in particular in the southern part of China and obviously within the Greater Bay Area, it's some of the most efficient and productive manufacturing, right? To get prototyping, to get the level of quality control, QA/QC for products that can be of export quality, right, into the various regions around the world. So there's certainly a lot of the existing capabilities and infrastructure already there. So as I think the key, I guess, cities involved in the Greater Bay Area start adopting some of the smart city plans, right? And Hong Kong, obviously, I think it's 2.0 right now. And we're pursuing multifaceted development. One of those key elements will be e-commerce. But e-commerce as a philosophy is great, and for investment is great. But I think investors are smart enough to look at, do you have a combination of the following? You need, obviously, government support, right? You need the support to build the infrastructure, to provide the impetus, right, for companies to set up. You need, as Lester pointed out, the right educational institutions that can provide the training required, right, for the talent. You need the policies involved to attract the talent that isn't already here. And then you obviously need to have the technology that's needs to be invested, right? So you need to attract investors. You need to have the investors deploy into those companies that have technology to allow us to then, get into the e-commerce development. So look, from our experience, certainly on the investing side and within even our funds where we do deploy into companies that are along the supply chain and in e-commerce, we certainly see that continued potential, right? And that potential is not within just what I've described in the GBA area. It's also the target markets, right? Beyond GBA, beyond China, into Southeast Asia, into the broader region, into Asia Pacific. So it's certainly something that we believe will continue to be extremely attractive for investors going forward.
Excellent, excellent. Recently, some entrepreneurs, unicorns in Hong Kong, for example, mentioned about their wish to go into the ASEAN market, from young. So every potential unicorn in Hong Kong and the GBA, every existing unicorn, the key question is, are we in the ASEAN region in a meaningful way, a significant way? But do you see the same happening from the other side? As a tech investor, do you see ASEAN startups or tech companies thinking about the Greater Bay Area as their top destination if they reach out?
No, certainly, and I think it's all about education and information, right? So there's a lot of sharing within the investment community. But certainly, if you look at places like Singapore, where they have already a very well-established infrastructure and environment to tap into the ASEAN region, when we look at collaborating with our colleagues for investments, it's a two-way flow, right? Just as we would look at how companies or portfolio companies in Greater China or Greater Bay Area can tap into the ASEAN region. When we're in the ASEAN region, we're looking at, okay, what sort of technologies that are being created to satisfy the market in ASEAN can actually be brought back into, this part of the world. I mean, one of the key things, obviously, from our perspective, which is more pragmatic, is also the capital markets, right? At the end of the day, I think within the broader ASEAN or Asia Pacific region, the Hong Kong capital markets is probably the most international and the deepest and broadest. And if you look at, ultimately, if you want to tap investor interests and investors that understand, the broader, Pacific Basin region, if you want to put it that way, it's got to be probably Hong Kong as one of the leading financial centers where you've got people understand the culture, the region, the growth prospects. And so these are things that we see are attracting talent and also technology into this part of the world. Excellent. So you are basically saying in Asia Pacific, the North-South super corridor for innovation and technology should be a two-way street. Yeah, and wow, great. I mean, think about Hong Kong as a lot of money waiting for good projects. So we need to, go ASEAN. Now, back to Lester, I really think as chairman of one of our best universities, the City University of Hong Kong. I mean,
very kind, George.
Under your leadership, I mean, this has gone from place to place now. One of the 5 universities from Hong Kong that are in the top 100 league table. of the world. Hong Kong just a tiny city, 8 million people. But I like to see more ASEAN students coming here as well. But anyway, you are the authority. You have anything to share with us about the university sector, which is very key to the future of all of us and the young people? Yeah. Also, as the former chairman of the Hong Kong Federation of Youth Group, you are also the authority on youth matters.
Well, I'd say this. The universities in Hong Kong generally have a very diverse faculty. So in the sense of, they're representing over 50 countries. There is a presence in Hong Kong. At City University alone, we have over 30 countries working in Hong Kong, working for us. And in terms of the student population, I must say that COVID has had an impact on foreign students coming in because they find it a little difficult. But still, we are seeing over 26 jurisdictions that are sending their students to Hong Kong. Now, that includes a good number of the ASEAN countries. In particular, we see a number of very good students coming in from India, as well as, there would be some from Malaysia as well. One of the unique things about working in Hong Kong in the universities is that we do have access to a very big research base in China as well. So, on that front, we need to develop these collaborations even better. And on that, I think that the students as well as the faculty, when they are able to travel across the border without the COVID restrictions, we will see a spike up in the research activity. And that is already starting to happen. But I think that we can see even bigger things once COVID restrictions are eased across the border.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lester. I mean, this is great. I mean, and this university factor, can really create more friendship and bonding between the people.
Absolutely. Well, I think that the other thing is that we see a very vivid, very vibrant entrepreneurship program also at different universities, such as what we have at City U. We have what is known as the Hong Kong Tech 300, where we hope that we can, in fact, promote 300 startup companies, and see them through from inception all the way through the to becoming hopefully unicorns one day. By providing them not just a seed capital, but also a lot of mentorship and a lot of support. And this is already attracting a lot of what I call town and gown collaboration. So we see, investors wanting to support these students going forward, and major corporations are already coming in to work as our partners on that. This kind of collaboration, I see is going to increase over the next few years. And it bodes well for our young people because they have a lot of talent that needs to be developed and harnessed. And this is one of the best ways which Hong Kong is doing to help these young people. I think from Anthony's point of view, your investors will be very interested to look at some of the projects that these students are coming up with. And I call them students, but some of them, of course, have already left school. But their association with the university continues. And we are very proud of them and continue to support them with this mentorship and the guidance. So, the number of patents that are coming through from the university and being applied by these entrepreneurs, I think is very, very encouraging.
Yeah, actually, just on that list, for transparency, I had the privilege of joining some of the Tech 300 accelerator programs. So I was on the panel to select some of these, entrepreneurial ventures that would receive the funding. So I completely agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. There were actually a few projects that we looked at that had some international PhD students that decided to study at CityU. So they just needed some guidance in terms of when they want to commercialize the technology, which direction to take and how to access, markets and make sure that the use case is relevant, because sometimes there's brilliant ideas, but there's actually no use case for it. So it's a little bit about guiding them, but I certainly don't doubt that there's talent. And we also work with various universities in Hong Kong that are trying to create the ability for the research departments to commercialize, right? Because sometimes you're a great researcher, you're great at developing technology, but you're not ideally suited to market your own capabilities and technologies. And that's where I think on the private investment side, people like ourselves can come in and add some value, right? To bring that talent to fruition, to take something that has fantastic potential and try to commercialize it so that it can benefit the broader society. So these are things that we're very keen on.
Excellent. Excellent. In fact, when I was chairman of Cyberport, the ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship, we were also a founding supporter for the CityU Startup 300 program. So very exciting. Anyway, I think we already depict this beautiful picture of startups connect between ASEAN and Greater Bay Area through Hong Kong. And well, just now I mentioned about ecosystems. So we need to also do more on ecosystems connect between ASEAN and GBA as well. That's a topic for post dialogue. But here I'd like to go back to one dear subject, and that is sustainability. We talk about sustainability in this complex world, and of course, ASEAN, the ASEAN region is booming, growing very fast. But also with problems such as plastics in the sea and so on. So the whole region needs greener and smarter solutions. And everybody's working hard, but how to balance between growth and sustainability, sustainable growth, so green growth, so they can coexist. It's not like choosing one or another. So I like to go back to Lester, and if you have any view about this, how to work together, between ASEAN region and GBA towards this sustainable development.
Yeah, I personally, I feel that there is insufficient dialogue among the regional partners on the questions of ESG. I feel that there could be more collaboration and mutual understanding of each other's challenges. Just looking at the power sector in these regions, I think that there is a very unequal use of power sources. There are some regions where we are looking at coal-fired power, and others where there is hydro. There are different power sources that are driving the economies, but the common goal should be carbon neutrality by 2050, and and on that front, given the stages of development of some of the ASEAN economies, I feel that different countries have to set their own goals, and there must be a bit of a common understanding among different regional partners on what they can do for each other. And this can only be attained through enhanced dialogue. And I think that it may be that, at a suitable forum, PBEC can also play a role on that.
Great. I think dialogues, the key enabler, no question, Lester. Anthony, anything on this front, on the green and sustainability ESG front that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think specifically on obviously the climate change component of it, right? It's such a complex topic. I think ESG is broader than that. I think sometimes we commingle these terminologies, but I think just a few things. One, to latch onto what Lester is saying, and I think that's part of the outcome from COP27. People understand that, for the developing countries, they may not have the resources and the capital to fund, right, some of these changes that will create better outcomes, whether it's from, shifts into, more alternative sources of energy, developing carbon capture, carbon credit solutions. So that's, I think, one part of it. But what we're seeing, for example, through Hong Kong, I mean, I think just announced recently, we'll do some sustainability finance, right? So I think next 5 years, we're going to raise about $23 billion worth of green bonds. There are ways to raise capital to finance the outcomes that we're seeking. Obviously, there's got to be a judicious use of that capital so that it is being put to good use. But I think, as we've probably seen in the last decade and a half, when in the developed countries where we shifted into alternative energy sources, there needs to be a lot of public sector or government support, right, to ensure, whether it's, feed-in tariffs when we were doing solar, right? How do we make sure that there is enough incentive in place to allow for public-private partnerships and for technology to be deployed to generate the sustainability outcomes we're looking for? So it will take time. There's no easy solution for it. There'll be a lot of debate and dialogue, as you both pointed out. But I think certainly it's a space that everyone cares about. Everyone cares about the future generations and the environment. So, we're closely looking at that. And hopefully, I think, through this region, we can find some leadership on that.
Well, well said. If there's one region or two that can be the hope of sustainability for the humankind, I think that must be the ASEAN region and GBA, because we have the fastest economic growth, and if we can practice green growth and inclusive and sustainable way, so it would be the hope for the world. Now, you mentioned about ESG, Anthony, about these acronyms and so on. You reminded me of the importance of S, and G, not just E, right? We talk about green energy, new energy transition and so on, but S, for example, helping the SMEs, helping the entrepreneurs, particularly female entrepreneurs and so on, all important as well. But well, it's a loaded topic, so let's deal with it later on. Now, in the interest of time, I'd like to go back to Lester and then to Anthony to see where if you have any one point that you like to add, so that we're going to conclude this breakfast dialogue in a few minutes. So Lester, anything you like to put on the table?
Thanks, George. I think that we need to look at Hong Kong's position as a bridge between the Greater Bay Area and the ASEAN economies. I think that there is, physically, we are really right at the center of both of those regions. And, these being big trading partners, I think that we can only hope that Hong Kong plays a vital role that links these two, as well as linking the Greater Bay Area to the rest of the world. And on that front, the capital that can come in, as well as the exports that can come out from the Greater Bay Area. I think that it will be a very important and significant presence for Hong Kong to continue to play.
Wonderful. That's Anthony, any one point that you want to put on the table?
Yeah, maybe something more specific to Hong Kong and its role. I think I sort of alluded to earlier, but I don't want to dive too deep into it. But there is a bifurcation in the world, right? In terms of maybe more North America versus what's happening in China. So I think Hong Kong, exactly like Lester pointed out, beyond being a bridge between, I guess, ASEAN and Greater Bay, I think it's actually the bridge between East and West. And I think it's really critical where you've got the two largest economies in the world. They need somewhere in the middle, right, to bridge that, whether it's talent, whether it's communication, whether it's capital. And at the end of the day, that's going to drive a better outcome for everybody. So I think, what we're speaking about today, it's a valuable, sharing, because people who haven't been able to travel efficiently to Hong Kong more in the recent past, right? It's good to hear about what's developing here and sort of the vision for this part of the world. So
excellent. Come and see Hong Kong. I like to echo Anthony's. We don't have any more quarantine, so I want to make it clear. Now, we are spot on. I like to close the breakfast dialogue this morning by summing up what my two distinguished panelists also said. And that is, we have a lot of opportunities for the Hong Kong ASEAN partnership, including, we mentioned a few, but the list is long, including second listing in the Hong Kong capital market for high growth Southeast Asian companies, for example, including more people-to-people links, more student exchange, university, more startups connect, and a lot more, ESG funding, going to the region and so on through Hong Kong. So opportunities are many, and some of them are golden opportunities. But to sum up, Hong Kong, Greater Bay Area, and ASEAN are really a two-way street to common prosperity, and also our partnership is the hope of the sustainability agenda, and only working together, we can help to make this world better. 1 and 1 is 11, not 2. So,
well done, George.
Yeah. So thank you, panelists, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take
Thank you.
care. Have a great day.
Thank you.